It's the mid-1970s, and guitarists around the globe are fixated on the electrifying new sound Eddie Van Halen is bringing to rock music. At a time when guitar solos were already the ultimate showcase of a musician's prowess, Eddie's two-handed tapping technique broke all the rules, redefining the boundaries of what the instrument could do. With this unconventional style, Eddie quickly cemented himself as a guitar legend, bringing a level of technical brilliance that astounded audiences and musicians alike. His playing wasn't just skilled, it was revolutionary, the kind of innovation that would inspire a new generation and forever change the landscape of rock guitar. However, what most fans didn't know was the complicated undercurrent between Eddie and Jimmy Page, the guitarist of another era whose haunting, multi-layered soundscapes had established Led Zeppelin as one of the greatest rock bands in history. Page, revered for his mystical compositions and daring improvisations, stood as a pillar of classic rock, an almost untouchable icon. Yet beneath the surface, Page and Van Halen's relationship was layered with admiration, creative influence, and, as time would tell, a touch of rivalry. Years later, as Page would reveal, this relationship was one that defied simple definitions, evolving from mutual respect into something far more intricate. Their journey together was as much about their differences as it was about what united them, each representing a different epoch in rock guitar, but bound by the shared ambition to push musical boundaries. For Van Halen, Page had been an inspiration from the very beginning. As a young guitarist, Eddie was captivated by Page's ability to conjure raw, powerful sounds with techniques that looked almost mystical. Page's one-handed riffs and phrasing style intrigued Eddie, setting him on a journey of discovery that would eventually lead to his pioneering two-handed tapping technique. Yet as Van Halen rose to fame, his confidence grew, and he didn't shy away from critiquing the very musicians who had inspired him. By the 1980s, Eddie's critique of Page's live performances as sloppy and lacking in precision startled fans and seemed to cast a shadow over the mutual respect they shared. Van Halen's bold commentary positioned him as a prodigy unafraid to challenge the established icons of rock, setting up an unspoken tension between the two giants that would linger even as both continued to redefine their roles in the rock pantheon. Picture this: Eddie Van Halen in his teenage years, wide-eyed and determined, standing in the crowd at a Led Zeppelin concert at the Forum in Los Angeles. Jimmy Page, with his wild mane and infamous dragon suit, was deep into one of his blistering solos, creating sounds that seemed to defy the limits of a single guitar. It was a defining moment for Eddie, who had always pushed boundaries but had never seen such mastery and abandon combined in one performance. Page's technique wasn't just about speed, it was the way he could lift his hand mid-riff, using only one to create intricate, echoing notes that captivated his audience. To Eddie, this was like an invitation to explore, to innovate. He would go home that night inspired, determined to build upon what he had seen, to turn it into something even wilder, something that would one day become his own signature sound. Van Halen's admiration for Page was rooted in these moments, but it was never blind adulation. As Eddie developed his own style, he embraced tapping but with an added twist. While Page would use his free hand to tap the fretboard, Eddie pushed it further, making it sound almost orchestral by blending tapping with melodic phrasing. Yet as Van Halen's career took off and his confidence as a guitarist grew, so did his willingness to critique his early influences. He openly respected Page's songwriting and studio work, calling Led Zeppelin and Led Zeppelin II classics, but Eddie's memories of Page's live performances were less charitable. In a bold 1981 Guitar World interview, he shocked fans by saying that Page on stage was sloppy, claiming he played as if he's got a broken hand and he's 2 years old. For fans of both guitarists, Eddie's critique was like throwing down a gauntlet. Jimmy Page, the towering figure who had redefined rock with his thundering riffs and supernatural stage presence, was now being called out by the rising star of Van Halen. Eddie's comments suggested a changing of the guard, a shift in what the new generation valued in a guitarist. Page's dark, mysterious artistry was clashing with Eddie's explosive precision, and for many, the comments added a layer of tension between the two icons. Van Halen, however, was the firecracker in the room, a guitar genius who had exploded onto the scene with a different set of priorities. To Eddie, every note was an expression of power and technical prowess. His performances, filled with high-speed tapping and dizzying solos, transformed rock into something fast, frenetic, and full of life. Where Page reveled in mood and mystery, Eddie focused on precision, volume, and excitement. On stage, he was relentless, flashing his signature smile as he moved through solos that seemed to defy physics. For him, rock guitar wasn't about restraint or mystique, it was about pushing the very boundaries of what a guitar could do. The contrast between them became apparent to fans, who often saw Page as a craftsman and Eddie as a virtuoso. Yet this distinction brought them into an almost unspoken competition. Eddie's pointed critiques of Page's live performances, calling them sloppy and lacking precision, spread quickly, and fans took sides. Was Eddie challenging the old guard, or was he genuinely disappointed in Page's less technical, more improvised style on stage? This subtle rivalry became a clash of philosophies. Jimmy Page represented rock's old soul, steeped in the mystique of blues and experimental soundscapes, while Eddie Van Halen symbolized the genre's young blood, the speed and energy of rock's new era. For fans, these two legends represented an evolving definition of greatness in rock guitar. Years went by without Jimmy Page ever addressing Eddie Van Halen's stinging critique of his live performances. To fans, this silence seemed telling, as if Page had chosen to let the criticism hang in the air, untouched. When Eddie tragically passed away in 2020, it marked the end of an era for rock guitar. Page, whose own legacy was partially entwined with Eddie's, finally broke his silence in a deeply reflective statement. Page paid tribute to Eddie's talent, calling him the real deal, a guitarist whose dazzling technique had transformed rock music forever. Page's words resonated with fans who had long sensed the tension, and his praise of Eddie's achievements seemed to bridge the gap between the two legends. But Page's statement did more than praise, it acknowledged the evolution of rock guitar, something that Eddie Van Halen had taken to new heights with his inventive techniques and signature sound. Page recognized the younger guitarist's boundary-pushing brilliance and what it had done for the genre, noting how Eddie's fearless approach had inspired countless musicians. In paying this tribute, Page seemed to reflect on his own legacy, perhaps seeing in Eddie's innovations the same hunger to push boundaries that had fueled his own journey with Led Zeppelin decades earlier. For fans, Page's message after Eddie's passing carried a bittersweet note. It was a respectful nod to the innovation Eddie brought to the guitar world, a final recognition that the rock landscape they had shared was changed forever. Where once there had been an unspoken rivalry, there was now reverence. In his parting words, Page conveyed the depth of his admiration, his tribute becoming a final chapter in a story of mutual influence, creative diversity, and ultimately, respect between two giants of rock. The legacies of Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen echo through every corner of rock music, each leaving an indelible mark that extends beyond their own styles and into the very fabric of the genre. Page's layered, almost mystical approach to music offered rock a sense of depth and atmosphere, blending blues, folk, and psychedelic rock into compositions that felt like journeys through sound. Tracks like Kashmir and No Quarter were more than songs, they were immersive experiences, crafted with a meticulous hand and a visionary's ear. Page's legacy wasn't just his technical skill, but his power to transport listeners to other realms, each note a part of a broader tapestry of emotion and narrative. Eddie Van Halen, meanwhile, transformed the electric guitar into a machine of pure energy and speed, pioneering techniques that gave rock its modern, electrifying edge. His innovative tapping technique and frenetic onstage presence turned rock concerts into athletic feats, with each solo a display of daring and precision. He challenged the limits of what a guitarist could do, infusing Van Halen's music with the unrestrained joy and intensity that made rock feel both dangerous and exhilarating. Where Page's legacy is steeped in the mystical and the timeless, Van Halen remains dynamic and explosive, a legacy of raw power and innovation. Their contrasting styles reveal the diverse possibilities within rock, proving that greatness could emerge from vastly different approaches. Page's dedication to the subtleties of sound and Van Halen's quest for technical mastery each pushed the other, and the entire genre, in new directions. Page's reverence for Eddie after his passing only underscored the mutual respect between them, a rare connection where rivalry gave way to admiration.